I'd like to go to our study session item, the Ann Arbor Public Schools Learning Plan for 2020 and 2021. Dr. Swift.
Thank you, President Johnson and trustees. It's wonderful to be with you this evening, and I appreciate many in our community that are joining us virtually also this evening. This is a study session, so as is our practice, we've laid out about 4 sections of the topic that we'll be looking at this evening. I wanted to just frame up where we are today. Trustees, approximately 126 days have passed since that study session on March 11th that we had virtually, and the closure of schools announcement on March 12th, and then the closure of schools on March 13th. 126 hard and long days for everyone in our community. So I just wanted to begin by sharing my deep gratitude to our students and teachers, our staff and leaders who worked so very hard over those last 3 months of school. And then also we have a tremendous summer school program in progress now. We appreciate that everybody worked so hard in our community to keep our students learning even while we were physically apart. We've now passed more than 350,000 meals distributed since that day, Monday, March 16th. We're serving approximately 1,750 to 2,000 students a day with breakfast and lunch. I want to give a shout out to that team. Special thanks to our parents for their patience and all the support during this time. And I would be remiss, and trustees, you know who they are, but our community partners, food gatherers, you can see on the screen that, and you know we received tremendous donations from the Ann Arbor Area Community Foundation, some $10,000 and even more now. We, in addition to distributing food, had volunteers who helped with door-to-door delivery for about 60 families during this time, families who struggled to get into one of our 16 pickup locations. So I just want to give everybody a big shout out for the tremendous work that has been accomplished together. I could go on with the stories, but the stories of teachers and students and families reaching out to each other to support each other through a very difficult time. I want to give a special shout out to our summer school 2020 teachers. Trustees, you're going to get a fuller report. And as you know, we are working through the initial implementation of Schoology, and I appreciate trustees, your sharing, and we're also working every day with our tech team on the wrinkles that will naturally occur with a system that's that robust. But we appreciate the work that's going on in summer school. Trustees, it's 300 teachers and a little over 5,000 students. And my report this week is somewhere between 75 and 95% of those 5,000 students who signed up for summer school are actually participating every day and still engaged with the process. I really appreciate, especially during a very difficult time, that 300 of our teachers are showing up every day and working with us to iron the wrinkles out of a new learning management system and to connect with students. I'm hearing positive reports from parents and from students on their engagement, and certainly every concern and every question we are following up to work on as well. I want to give a shout out on participation rate. Trustees, this is going to come in a little bit more, just a little bit later as we think about the participation rate that we had during the spring. You can see about 99% of our families, we confirmed their connectivity, and anywhere between 88 and 93% of our students were participating every week. And you recall, Trustee, that metric of participation was not just showing up, it was actually turning in an assignment each week. So that's just a reflection on where we are. As we near the end of July and the 1st of August, it's natural, it's in our rhythm to think about back to school. And so we're setting out the back to school plan this evening. I want to thank the trustees who've been in smaller meetings and thinking sessions, and we've done a lot of work to think about how to prepare for this time. So what we'll be looking at this evening are really 4 parts. 1, our rationale and context and an overview of the recommendation that we're making to the board. And if the board is supportive, trustees, this is really 4 board meetings in a row that will be exploring all the components of this 2020-21 plan. And then you will be passing a plan. We'll be listening to you and listening to the community, revising our plan as we go, and then we will need to pass and approve a plan on August 12th on that meeting. The second part of the evening, Ms. Bacalor, our very own Master of Public Health, will be coming to help us with the public health update. She has become key and critical, really, to all of our meetings every day as we think about health and safety first. Thirdly, Ms. Dawn Linden, Assistant Superintendent of Teaching and Learning, will be coming with the Reimagine Learning Plan. What she's sharing this evening is really just an overview or highlights, and then we'll get down to next steps. We recognize as we prepare for the end of August and the traditional Labor Day return to school that when we return to school this fall 2020, it will have been more than 5 months since our students and our staff and our teachers have been with us in our schools. That truly is, I know everybody's using the word, but that truly is an historic time. Learning has been in session. Folks are busy every day. Students are engaged. And yet it will have been more than 5 months since students have been with us in our physical buildings. We know, you all know, you're called to this work as elected officials. We know the importance of school in a child's life, both as a place of learning and as a safety net of supports for our families. And trustees, when we left on March 13th, our free and reduced lunch rate was around 25% of our students. We could speculate this evening, but I think we can all agree that that rate has increased over these 126 days that we've been physically apart. We know the importance of school in the lives of our students and our families. And we've done our very best during this time to bridge the gap with the help of our teachers and staff, our community partners, our leaders, and to continue to meet the needs of our students, even while they're away from our buildings physically. We've missed our students every day. There's a special moment, a unique moment in all of this, where you separate yourself from the critical mission of teaching and learning in order to keep health and safety first. And we know why it's necessary to do that, trustees, and I appreciate that you all have a conviction and a commitment to keep children safe. And yet it is a very heartbreaking time when we have to separate a little bit from some of what we're called to do in order to keep folks safe. So I say all that to say no one is looking forward more to having children in our schools, teaching and learning occurring face to face, buildings full and bustling and happy children. The sounds of the school are beautiful music to all of us and to all of our educator and parent partners in the community. And we are looking forward to that day. Pioneer Choir sings in one of my favorite of their performances, a song called "It Takes a Whole Village to Raise Our Children." It takes a whole village to raise one child. We must each carry the burden, and we all share the reward. And I've thought about that song. I pulled up the video, which I know I'm not supposed to take those videos because they're copyrighted music, but I still do it because they're such good memories for us. We know that what we're talking about tonight is not just an Ann Arbor Public Schools endeavor. This is an Ann Arbor community endeavor to take care of our children, to raise our children well in this community, and in doing so, to build a strong Ann Arbor. So we're looking this evening at 3 parts and then our next steps. Trustees, I know we have a lot of questions to answer. And I know this is a hard time for folks because it's a time when there are far more questions than answers. And that's frustrating for everyone. I completely get that. And yet our team has worked long and hard days to begin to get the semblance of a learning plan. Because regardless of COVID, learning will be in session, school will launch, learning will launch, and we will begin learning with students right away at the end of August. So I want to talk just a little bit about student safety. You know, trustees, we're hardwired for student safety in this business. We think about the regular school day activities, such as serving on bus or street crossing duty, conducting the safety drills, fire drills, etc. I think about as a superintendent, staying up overnight to be watchful and monitoring Michigan winter weather, being in meetings at 3:30 in the morning in order to make a safe weather call about one day of school. So we're just wired that way all the time to think about student safety first. On a few occasions in our time together here in Ann Arbor, decisions represent a more significant milestone. I think a few years back when this board voted to fight a court battle all the way to the Michigan Supreme Court to prevent the open carry of weapons in Ann Arbor Public Schools and in Michigan schools. We had the full support of our community in that battle, and we won. I think about our decision back in mid-March in making that anguishing decision to close school buildings to protect students and staff. And I think about today as we evaluate the prospect of a back-to-school season amidst this historic COVID pandemic. As educators and trustees and parents, we are designed for student safety. Student safety is in our DNA, and this is the one thing, the one priority that drives what we're going to be talking about this evening. So while there may be questions and folks may not always agree with decisions of recommendations of our administrative team or decisions of this board, this deliberative body, what I do have confidence in Ann Arbor is that we can all come together around the priority of student and staff safety. So trustees, in the interest of setting the information out clearly, for those who may not, it's 6:30 right now, for those who may not want to stay for all of our activities this evening, I'll go ahead and set out the summary of the plan. And that way we'll just, spoiler alert, we'll just get it right out there. And then we'll go about the process of looking at the rationale, looking at the health data, looking at our learning plan, and thinking about next steps. So there is a lot more detail coming up in a little bit, but here's the overview. At this time, the science and our current data do not support the safe return of all students to an in-person learning environment in our school buildings in the Ann Arbor Public Schools for our fall start of 2021. So we will be on a virtual learning status as we open school this fall. Learning will be in session, and yet our school buildings will continue to do that learning virtually rather than in our school buildings. So we're designating the week of August 31st with the board's support, of course. That's the purpose of this evening, is to discuss. The week of August 31st is designated as a week of preparation and onboarding activities for our students and families. They'll have a lot of wraparound support from our Ann Arbor Public Schools team during that week of August 31st. We'll talk more about all of those activities and what they look like a little bit later. On Tuesday, September 8th, following Labor Day, all students will report to class to begin school year 2021, and learning will be in session beginning on Tuesday morning, September 8th. Because this fall virtual learning approach will feature real-time interactive learning, teacher and students learning together in real time, our regular classes, curricula, and wide programs that we always offer. Because that is the case, that week of September 8th, we'll have a little bit of an abbreviated school day to allow our students and our families to build some endurance on this virtual interactive model. When the COVID data supports a safe return to in-person school, we will deploy a phased approach to return students to in-person school. We'll phase that in based on our youngest and our most vulnerable students first. We'll bring our students in gradually with their teachers and staff so that we can observe and collect the data and ensure that we can maintain a safe, phased-in transition. During the 2021 fall and school year, 3 program choices will be offered to our parents. Our AAPS programs feature our quality teachers, rich curricula and programs. This will include real-time engagement with students and teachers and programs, and it's called synchronous. My lay word for that is real-time, active, interactive. It will include regular feedback, skill development, and students will accrue grades and academic progress toward the next grade level, and they will obtain their credits toward graduation. So these programs include 3 options, and we'll go through this more, but just a quick overview. The first option is A2, Classroom Connect. It's in the middle there. That classroom option begins virtually, but it's one where students will, when it's safe, migrate first to a hybrid schedule and then to a full in-person learning schedule. When needed throughout the year, this option can be accessed virtually or face-to-face in a hybrid model. But in this classroom, a student is a member of their school, classroom, community with their teacher, and they're starting remote, and we hope and will watch the data for the time when they can start to come to school. The program on the left option, A2, Student Link, is a classroom option where students are members of a virtual class, and this is an all virtual class. Everyone in the class is virtual and is choosing to remain virtual. So that A2 Student Link, the students are a member of a virtual class. Students intend to remain fully virtual, and they're engaged in a learning community that's fully virtual. We ask that our parents make a commitment for at least a semester, if not the full year, on that plan, because that will allow them to be able to stay with their class and stay with their teacher. The third option, trustees, is one you know well. It's a familiar option. And this graphic is, I guess I do want to make the point right here before they take that down. This goal is for our students eventually to return to school. So we do have that full in-person learning there. We know that it's not safe scientifically to do that right at this moment, but we do keep that out there as our goal. Trustees, we do also have our A2 virtual, which has been our standard virtual learning component. It is available for grades 6 through 12. This option is a little bit different. It's for those students and families who would like an independent learning option, where a student learns individually, completes their work individually in a self-paced approach. Students do work with an Ann Arbor Public Schools teacher, a quality teacher. They receive regular student feedback. Most of that feedback is conducted through emails and personal interactions. And in A2 virtual, students do meet with their teacher one time per week in an interactive session. Those students and parents out in the community who've used A2 virtual in the past, I do want to point out this is our regular A2 virtual programming. It is the more independent individual option. Two other components of the overall plan for this fall. Throughout the 2021 school year, all students, all 18,500 or more students will be connected to a base camp group. If you'll forgive that term, it's kind of a funny term, but we think about base camp as a place where a student can come back to. In mountain climbing at base camp, you meet your partners there, you have your provisions there, you connect there. Every student across our system will be connected to a base camp. These groups go by many different names. They're called advisory groups, forum, sky time. We could go down the list. Many schools have great names for these groups. Every student will meet every day in their base camp group for connection, for social, emotional support, to develop and ensure relationships are in place, to be that front line, to notice if additional help is needed. This is our home base for 2021 across the system. In addition, trustees, you noticed, and we talked about it a lot last spring, that participation rate in the spring hovering a little below or a little above 90%. What we all recognize, and it's a hard truth, is that there are a percentage of our students who struggle to engage virtually for any number of reasons. And so in addition to that home-based support, we will have a network of what we're calling Connection Plus supports. It's about connection. So throughout this 2021 school year, our Ann Arbor Public Schools students with the most needs will have an additional connection and support in small group settings to ensure real-time student and family supports are delivered. So for a student with special learning needs, that might occur through a service provider, through a teacher consultant in that way. For a student with second language needs, it might occur through that professional. You're familiar with the work of our intervention specialists who each have a caseload. We see this network of support groups occurring virtually when it's allowed, when we're able to, occurring face-to-face in very small, socially distanced groups. We see these groups meeting near children. So this summer, during summer school, we already have some of these networks functioning and working robustly. One of the examples recently is Peace Neighborhood Center, where that team has their students in their learning lab and they're accessing summer school, but they're doing that within a support cell, support connection group. So we are looking, trustees, and I was so delighted to hear a public commentary along this line tonight, but we are looking at deploying our staff virtually and or face-to-face so that 5 or 10%, whatever that percentage is, of students and families who need extra help in order to have the support they need to engage in learning, we're going to deploy members of our team to ensure that that happens. It will necessarily happen in a safe and socially distanced or virtual environment. Secondly, or thirdly, on supports, I want to touch base that our food and nutrition distribution will continue throughout this time. Was on the phone today with representatives from the governor's office and talking to them about our needs for food distribution for fall. And trustees, you recall, we got some grace in our delivery of food and being able to deliver food directly to students in terms of all of the regulations and some of the paperwork. And we're wanting that kind of flexibility to continue so that we can meet the needs of every student and ensure that whether their paperwork is in or not, that we're still able to meet their needs. So that's the overview, trustees, of our learning plan for fall. There are a lot more highlights and exciting components coming up in just a little bit, but that's a great start for those who perhaps want to jump over to watch something else this evening. They have the overview already. So we're using some core values in designing this learning plan, and you won't be surprised by these, trustees. Health and safety first. We talked about that a lot. Quality educational experience. Trustees, this will not be a click in kind of learning experience. And I know that there are charter schools and other well-intended organizations sending emails to our students and parents now. I want to remind everyone that this programming will be the same Ann Arbor Public Schools, rich quality teachers, curricula, programs, and offerings. It will be delivered a little bit differently, but we will continue to offer the full Ann Arbor Public Schools experience. It will also, another value that we had is to ensure that there are connections and support across our community. We just appreciate all of our community partners and ensuring that our students from poverty, second language students, students who are challenged by mental health, and we recognize that so many of our students will have, unfortunately, experienced some level of trauma during this time. And so we want to be prepared with that value of support and connections. We're always approaching our work, and never more so than now, that work of social justice and anti-racism. And what a time, they say it's not a moment, but it's a movement. But what a time in the passing of John Lewis over this past weekend reminds us that it's our job to get in the way and to get in good trouble on behalf of children, and particularly Black and brown children who have traditionally been underserved. So trustees, as we work through the learning plan over the coming weeks and we approve a plan that gets sent to the state, I hope that you and all of us will keep this guiding principle of ensuring that our plan looks out to ensure that we're using this opportunity to leverage social justice and change. I also want to point out that we're keeping as a guiding principle that we're focused on the full school year. We never want to experience the disruption that we experienced last spring. And we knew every week of last spring and every week of this summer, we've been working to make our virtual engagement stronger and better. We have a lot more work to do in the next 5 weeks to get all of the components to the quality that we want them to be. But we are looking at the whole year, bringing all of our students back together all at once would certainly be a recipe for another disruptive event with the spread of COVID in our community currently. So we're looking at the whole year and asking ourselves the question, how can we keep everyone safe and get the most days of learning in for this 2020-21 school year? We know that we're playing the long game to take care of our children and to ensure that their growth is strong. And so we are not just looking at Q1, we're looking at the whole year. And I know trustees, from your questions over previous weeks and months, you are also. We're going to be anchored by facts, and let's look at some of those quickly. Ms. Bacalor is coming to give you her professional opinion. She is the health expert, but I'll just share some of the basic facts up front. Trustees, you know, we're the 4th largest school district in the state of Michigan, 18,500 students. We are the 2nd largest employer in the Ann Arbor area. We do have the sources for this data here. And trustees, you understand, I know you understand this because you help me and you work with us on decisions every day, that any day we make the decision for our community, our school buildings to be open, that decision causes about 25,000 individuals to have to leave their home. And so as we're in the midst of a COVID environment, we know, trustees, that that is also part of your thinking. Although a parent might think about their own child in their own classroom, and that is appropriate and right for them to do, as trustees, you have to think about the aggregate. And so those are the facts. To our dismay, there are facts in our COVID reality that just are almost unbearable to look at. And while we are grateful that we are not the hotspot that Florida and Texas and Arizona are at this time, we're very grateful that that is not our reality here during July. Trustees, since June 6th, the Washtenaw County COVID case rate has ticked up, moderated just a little bit this week, but still dramatically up over the previous 6 weeks. Our Ann Arbor region, Detroit area, you can see the little map there. Ms. Bacalor will have that in a better format for you to see. We're currently rated as medium high risk. And our Michigan data has increased since the end of May, shortly after Memorial Day. As you hear Governor Whitmer share, that data started ticking up and has not leveled out since then. On the upper right-hand side, you can just see that roller coaster ride that causes just a pit to form, that we are now nationally at higher levels of case occurrence than we have ever been during this entire pandemic. What's not on this slide, but is sitting there for all of us to think about, is our reality in Ann Arbor as a university town, as a small town, wonderful town, with a big university in the middle of our town. We're watching the calendar as our U of M students are welcomed back here in just a few days, and we know that there is potentially some impact coming from that as well. There are just a couple of areas of concern that I want to touch on, and these studies are very recent. So if folks have not seen them, before we post this to our website, we will put the links to the studies in here. I apologize I didn't get that done, but we will do so that folks who are interested to read the studies can. We know from a practical perspective, Ms. Bacalor is the professional, I am the educator. From a practical perspective, our students have not been together with staff in groups inside of schools since mid-March. So one of our concerns is what will be the impact of students returning to schools. We want to watch that and be careful and do that in a thoughtful and responsible way. We're learning now that older children are thought to spread the virus just as much as adults. The study recently released was out of South Korea, approximately 65,000 people involved in that study, particularly 10 to 19-year-olds. So it's about at that threshold of 5th and 6th grade and above. Where there appears to be the same level of transmission. Children and teens are more and more a rising percentage of the infections. And we have seen very recently childcare outbreaks in Texas and in other areas of the country, and a Bloomberg study on summer camp outbreaks. Some of those summer camps, I just give them credit because their protocols were pristine, and yet, despite following all of the guidelines, still experienced outbreaks. So there's so much that we do not yet fully understand about this COVID virus, its impact on students, children and adults, small children, older children and adults. Trustees, we talked about all the energy that we put into a weather call and all the energy we put into other safety decisions. And yet now we're faced with one that's truly about life and death, or it could be. There are 3 areas that I want to just give a shout out to that we would need support and help with. And this is what we're lobbying for. Governor Whitmer is in full support. And yet at the national level, we do not see these areas where they need to be in order to be confident in a full reopening. Readily available testing and timely results. Trustees, we received results today on a staff member, and those results came in 4 days. And 4 days is far too long. In many of our cases, those results are coming in about a week. Once in a while, we can get them in 24 or 48 hours. But key and critical to a safe sustaining of the opening of schools is the ability to get into a case, remove the infected individual to a virtual environment before they impact other students and or staff or families in the classroom. So having readily available testing and timely results is key and critical. Every country, Germany is an example, that has reopened schools has had this component if they have reopened schools successfully. And even with that component, most of Germany's schools are not yet open. Second area is adequate contact tracing. I do want to share with the community this evening that Ms. Bacalor, at our encouragement, is mobilizing a team, a COVID response team. We are using our nurses, and they're led by Keely and Ms. Bacalor, Keely Hoffman and Ms. Bacalor, and you'll be hearing from them more over the coming board meetings. We will be mobilizing a COVID response team to do the contact tracing. We work closely with Washtenaw County Health Department. We appreciate their support and their guidance. And yet we know in the Ann Arbor Public Schools, we want to offer that contact, that tracing, that call to the classroom right away as quickly as possible when we get a positive result. So we are mobilizing a team, but overall, we do not have a national strategy. We do not have adequate forces for that effort. The third area, trustees, you're aware, I've briefed each of you, although I need to follow up with the exact dollar amounts. We have made an initial order of PPE. We will be preparing, trustees, a second order. This includes the face shields, cloth masks, gowns, and gloves. And yet, as superintendent, I want to be able to be confident that our supply chain on PPE would sustain us. And trustees, as we hear across the country, when infection rates tick up, there is often a diminished availability. So we did have a conversation with Senator Peters. We do hear that our legislators are working to ensure that there would be adequate supplies on an ongoing basis. And yet at this time, we do not have any of these three assurances. So with that, trustees, we can just overview the learning plan. As we said, August 31st, activities such as technology checkout or tune-up of technology, books and materials pickup in a socially distanced, touchless when possible sort of way, orientation to Schoology so that our parents and our students, everyone feels confident in our overall learning platform. We'll have parent and school community engagement meetings, likely by grade level because they'll be virtual, at every school community. so that everyone has an opportunity to get the communication virtually. Connection activities for students, link crew, and other activities. We will be gearing up and preparing. We know that this is going to be probably the most challenging year for students and families and staff. And so we want to take those 4 days of that week of August 31st to connect and to ensure that everybody's ready to go. All students will report to class. Learning will convene on Tuesday, September 8th. Those first few days will be a little bit shorter scheduled to allow our students to build up their capacity with families, and we will have real-time engaged learning. All classrooms will be fully active, fully engaged in real-time learning. So the 3 options, you've seen them, trustees. We're just going to dive into a little bit more detail, but we can see the A2 Classroom Connect option. That's offered young 5 through 12th grade. And you can see the students are in the cloud, and then the students are in the school. So as our students and parents consider this option, this is the option for those students whose intention, when it is safe to do so, is to return to school. So the roadmap for these students will be fully virtual to a hybrid approach. A hybrid is where 2 days a week students are engaging virtually, and 2 days a week they're engaging online. I'm sorry, yes, and 3 days a week they're engaging online. But the intention is to move into the face-to-face environment. Now, parents may ask, what if we choose this program and then perhaps we have a case in our family or circumstances change and we want to remain virtual for the year? That option will be offered right here with the Classroom Connect. Because in the hybrid model, 12 students may be home, for example, half the students, 12 students may be at school in an elementary environment. It is possible for families and classrooms and schools to move in and out of this setting on the A2 Classroom Connect. Ultimately, when it's determined to be safe, this group is looking for the day to be back in school. Our second option is that A2 student link. That A2 student link is also a synchronous real-time learning experience with your teacher. It, on the other hand, in that environment, the student is a member of a virtual learning community. When possible, just like we do with Rec and Ed, we will cluster students from the same school together, but it is possible that there will be some exciting mix in that group as students choose to join a fully virtual community. In a moment, you'll see some of our enrichment opportunities. All of our students in all 3 programs will be fully welcome to participate in all of our enrichment and recreational activities, so there's no difference there. The third option is one that some of our students and families are already familiar with, and that is our A2 virtual. You can see in that cloud, it's one student on their laptop. The student who thrives in A2 virtual is a student who chooses to work independently with the teacher working alongside. That's how A2 virtual works. It's a more independent learning, self-paced learning environment. Students still benefit from high quality AAPS teachers and curricula. They receive feedback from teachers and all the time, and then once a week scheduled live interaction. Let's talk just a little bit about specialized supports for our students with special needs. We appreciate our tremendous SISS team and our teacher team and our APAC group and all of our folks who've been thinking, along with Dr. Marianne Fedician and Ms. Dawn Linden, Assistant Superintendent. We've been thinking and working all along as to how we can ensure that our students with special needs are receiving all the supports we can possibly leverage. So they will be engaged. Our students with special needs will be engaged in one of the 3 programs. Their IEPs will be fully active and absolutely in place. They will receive additional supports. You're going to see that Wednesday is a special scheduled day, so they'll have additional supports throughout the week and also on Wednesdays. Therapy and services will be delivered virtually, and then when it's allowed, move into a face-to-face. Instruction is universal design for learning to support everyone's access, and in particular, to support students with special needs. Students with disabilities will have active engagement in social emotional learning to set and achieve positive goals, understand and manage emotions, feel and show empathy for others, and maintain those positive relationships. We're excited about our programming for students with special needs. And I want to give a shout out to all of our teachers who are out there this summer. We have a robust group of students with IEPs who are receiving therapeutic and services support throughout this summer, and it's going beautifully, as well as extended school year supports and learning supports. So we really appreciate that we're already fine-tuning that system through summer school practice. I want to touch on acceleration because I know that there are a group of families out there thinking, if this is going to be a different school year, what additional opportunities might be available to accelerate my student in a particular area of learning or in a cluster of areas of learning? So we'll be offering acceleration as we do all the time in the Ann Arbor Public Schools, advanced coursework, AP coursework, international baccalaureate, 8 world languages, and accelerated opportunities. In addition, every high school student will have access to the 7th period option. And there's a time period across all of the high schools where if students want to leverage this time, perhaps they're going to have fewer social engagements and they want to just gain some extra credits, we will be offering that additional learning, which we do also when our buildings are open, but I just want to reassure folks that will still be available. Students are also able to take up to 2 courses per semester on A2 Virtual to obtain additional credits. We do always talk to our students, of course, about managing and keeping balance, but there are opportunities to accelerate. We have dual enrollment and community resource classroom learning opportunities, and we'll be enhancing those offerings as well. I want to touch on the learning schedule. This is one of the most important areas that our teachers and parents and students want to hear about. So we're talking about live classroom learning, 4 days per week, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. Those days, and Ms. Linden will be showing the actual daily schedules, or at least the draft. We're going to work of course, with our teams and partners across the district to fine tune that. But typically it includes about 3 blocks of learning each day. Those blocks, just like at school, have an interactive teaching part, and then also a part of the block that is the assignment time, the maker time, the application time. So students will have a rhythm to their day, but they will not be tied to a screen for 6 or 7 hours. So we're excited about that rhythm, that routine, which is very important at school, in our buildings, and at school in your remote environment. Wednesday will be dedicated as an exploration learning day. Trustees, that day does have assignments and activities from the teacher, from the direct curricula that students will be engaged in, but we'll also have a full complement of personal passion and enrichment opportunities. Ms. Bacalor's Rec and Ed team are going to leverage into our internal team so that we have everything from belly dancing to ukulele available. And that won't just be on Wednesdays, but Wednesdays will be a time where we have a more flexible schedule so that students may participate in a forum, special topic discussion, mental health groups, music or arts, additional music or arts. They may engage in academic skill tutoring. These activities will occur both virtually, and while it is safe, as long as it is safe, some may occur, as they are right now, in the neighborhood park, outdoors, in a socially distanced and masked environment. Saturdays will also feature a full menu of recreational opportunities for students and families. These will be outdoors as they're able to be, and they'll also be virtual because we know a fair number of families prefer accessing through virtual, and so we'll offer the full continuum on Saturdays as well. These enrichment opportunities will be available only to our Ann Arbor Public Schools enrolled students. We want to make sure that we have a full complement of classes available for students and families to sign up for, and so we will limit that enrollment to our Ann Arbor Public Schools enrolled families. Very good. Go ahead. So all of our plans have this in common, and that is our regular quality curriculum programming, rigorous academics, specialized needs support, acceleration opportunities, Project Lead the Way, world languages, academic interventions and skills support, tutoring as needed. I do want to emphasize attendance will be taken on a daily basis. With A2 Virtual, that's a special program, a 50D program in the state. There is a different way of taking attendance in that program, but in the other 2 programs, attendance will be taken daily. Student progress will be monitored and shared. Grades will be given. Student progress will be reported as it normally is, parent communication, progress reports, and report cards. And all of that will follow the regular reporting cycle of the Ann Arbor Public Schools academic school year. And you'll hear more about that as our teachers and teams and principals and leaders work through regulating those rhythms, just like they do every year. Technology will be provided. Instructional and exploratory elective materials will be shared. Even in our summer middle school learning challenge, that's going on right now. We've shared the challenge each week, and for our students who need it the most, we've actually ensured that they had materials delivered to them that would help them to participate in the learning challenge. So what are our next steps? And then trustees, we really look forward to your discussion. Our next steps, we're going to ask our parents to begin to learn with us about the distinctions of the 3 offerings in the Ann Arbor Public Schools. Because we've said from March 13th that we want to meet our students and families right where they are. And so we want our folks to learn all about the options and to select the program preference that they prefer. We'll get that information out with the link to make the selection before the end of next week, so by the end of the month. And we'll ask over the coming 10 days that families and teachers and principals and students have those conversations and give consideration as to what program would suit the students' needs best. Secondly, we're going to be engaging widely in community input and feedback. We want to thank everyone who's reached out to us. Trustees, you're aware we've received hundreds of messages, and I just appreciate everyone who's taken time to reach out with your ideas, with your offers of support and help. We will be receiving community input and feedback. We're not always able to individually answer every single email, but we do review those ideas, and we appreciate hearing, and we do adjust our plans based on what we're hearing. Thirdly, I want to touch this evening on community responsibility. We're excited to serve our students. And yet there's a moment, more than a moment, of significant loss and grief. Because it's very true, I believe, that if we had handled this COVID pandemic differently at the national level, we would not be where we are today, facing 6 weeks of increasing rates here in Michigan, while at the same time considering ourselves fortunate that we're not in the hot spot that many states are in. So there's a moment of grief and loss there, because we should not be here tonight, trustees. Or if we were here, we should be here talking about some reasonable protocols and processes. And unfortunately, we're here talking about extending our time virtually. But I want to give a shout out to the community. I had the opportunity to engage with Mayor Taylor, with interim city manager Tom Crawford, with our state superintendent, with a representative from the governor's team today, and with the Ann Arbor District Library, Josie Parker, the director. I've engaged with many community and civic leaders in Ann Arbor and across the state. And what we all agree on is we each have a responsibility to do what we can to ensure that we can begin to migrate groups of students back to our buildings just as soon as possible. And what we know, trustees, is wear our mask, watch our distance, and wash our hands. I believe in Ann Arbor, we can flatten this curve. We can get our infection rate down, and we can get to the point where we can welcome students into our schools, even if at a 50% rate. And yet we're not there now, and it's up to each of us to take these fundamental steps. What we do individually matters for our collective outcome. So I just appreciate Ann Arbor, our community, and our commitment to take the steps. There's so much that we cannot control, and yet these three things we can control. So the beginning of August, the end of July, is the traditional back to school season. We often hear and understand that collective outcry from all of us to get back to normal, to get back to school. We absolutely understand that frustration and that outcry, and we feel it also. And yet, responsibly and reasonably, we understand that for this 2021 school year, we will not return to the familiar way that we used to do school. Instead, we're moving forward to a new way of learning together while physically apart. We're learning together to reimagine our learning. And as we promised back in the spring, our commitment is to innovate and grow our way together through this pandemic. We are Ann Arbor. It's not just what we do, it's who we are. So we're going to work together to support this return to learn. And we hope in the coming days a return to school. But we will do that responsibly in a phased approach, working with our most at-risk, neediest, and youngest students first. We do understand, as our high school choir sings, it takes a whole village to raise our children. And yet there's no more meaningful endeavor that we do. Trustees, I appreciate that you did the work to get elected. You raised your right hand and you took an oath. And I appreciate that you're living that oath even when these decisions are hard. So we're reminded with COVID of how closely we're connected. We are all connected. You're going to hear about it next from Ms. Bacalor. We are connected in the very air we breathe, and she's going to remind us in the very droplets that we hope we don't share during the COVID pandemic. But we are all connected. It is not just a euphemism or a nice phrase. It's the hard science. And our partnership in support of children is both a high risk and a high reward endeavor. I know, and we know, that our Ann Arbor community, our teachers and staff and leaders, our students and parents and community, we know this community will rise. We will rise to this current challenge, and we will see our way to better days ahead. And yet we're real tonight. We see the science, and we know that we're making the best decision for now. Trustees, I want to reiterate that we don't make any decisions as an administrative team. We make recommendations to the Board of Education. You are in receipt of our recommendation. This is a study session, and so the focus is on your questions. And so it is 7:25, and we'll allow, as President Johnson has noted, for questions, and then we'll move on to the health update and to the learning plan overview. Trustees, there are many more parts of this, as you know, over the coming weeks. Policy and governance decisions. Mr. Lautzana is fully prepared with a full building briefing, but we knew that this would be a heavy lift tonight, so we've pressed that out to next week, although you'll see some of it in the health update. So you will continue to receive all of the areas. And with that, President Johnson, we're ready to receive questions. Thank you, or comments.
Thank you, Dr. Swift. We appreciate the presentation and the thoughtful manner by which you went through this process. You're right. We, as board members, are kept in the loop on these developments as they progress. I remember our early conversations back in March leading up to this, and I must say that I know it took a lot of work, and so thank you to you and your team for putting this together. Trustees, do you have any questions or comments? I'll watch the hands raised. Okay, great. Trustee Kelly.
Thank you. I was kind of hoping not to go first because my list is long, and I was hoping other folks would get to some of them first, but I'll just dive in. There was a slide about special ed ideas, but it was pretty vague. And what we know about special ed is that it's really about individualized learning plans. How will families learn about the individualized ways that their student services will be met? Will that be an email? Will it be team meetings? Like how can families expect to get some of that individualized attention?
So Ms. Linden, I know can start that answer, and then Dr. Fedician can help us as well. There she is.
Good evening, trustees. Thank you so much. It's a great question. You're right, Trustee Kelly, these are individualized decisions. And so they are made with the IEP team. And our goal is always to implement our IEPs in full. If while being in the virtual setting, there are adjustments that need to be made to those plans so that we can support our students more fully in a virtual environment, then the case managers and principals and school teams will reach out to families and schedule IEP meetings. I think Dr. Swift mentioned Wednesdays as being sort of asynchronous learning days, and those days are really intentional so that we have some space in the fall to conduct many of those meetings that we anticipate will need to take place.
Typically, when you're talking special ed timelines, it's school days. And so a lot of things don't happen over the summer for obvious reasons. This year feels really different. Will it be possible to conduct that kind of outreach and that sort of planning so that families are ready to be up and running on day one?
Yeah, it's an excellent question. Dr. Swift, do you want to?
I know that part of that week of August 31st is geared toward getting that connection and ensuring that everyone's received a connection and that things are getting started. I also know that that week of September 8th will be a lot of team building on school teams. So we do want to ensure that all of our students get to fully engage in those meaningful school orientation activities. So just like in the normal back to school cycle, they are going to work to have that going as quickly as possible, but also understanding that there will be some transition at the beginning of the year. So I apologize for that being yes and no is an answer, but.
I'm sure yes and no is probably part of every answer at this point. I'm just really hopeful that, you know, we can find ways to help folks get settled a little earlier than would be typical in a normal year, just because everything's so different. Yes. And you mentioned that universal design for learning. I think that's a great, I think we should be doing it all the time everywhere. But I'm really glad to see it part of this plan, and I'm hoping that what that includes, and I know we'll be talking technology later, but what it includes is that when student devices are being brought online, that we think about UDL when we're bringing devices online. So, for example, screen readers. You know, kids are going to be having just a lot more time on a screen, and it would be great to have everybody up to speed on what those tools look like. So there's no delay, there's no barriers. So. Thank you for that. Dual enrollment, you mentioned. Is I have some confusion around whether a student needs to be full-time in the district to count as one of our students for the purpose of enrollment. And I know that there's a lot of competing opportunities in the community for learning. If a family wants to just come to Ann Arbor part-time for the fall because they have a great opportunity with a local community college, or they have a great opportunity for some other things for their students, what's the minimum they can be here for and still be ours?
I will get that answer. It's a number of class periods, and I don't want to say it because I'll be wrong, and there are great counselors and folks out there. So let me phone a friend on that if it's okay.
Yeah, sure. Sure. Yeah, there's no rush. I know that there's incredible community support for schools, and there's been a lot of chatter about the importance of selecting your public district so that that enrollment number and then the tied funding to it doesn't go elsewhere, that it stays in districts to help districts support that. And so I just want families to know exactly, you know, what that line is so that they can maximize their opportunities, but also support the schools that they want to support. So I think that's good information to have available. Late start opportunities and snow days. These are very, very important issues to some folks. And so I'm curious what the teenagers will have in terms of the ability to get those extra Z's, and will there be snow days?
Well, Trustee, I was truly hoping to avoid that subject tonight. And I probably shouldn't have brought up the weather decision, so I started it myself. But I am proud to say that the daily schedule, you'll see it when Miss Linden shares, is a later start for high school students. It does represent that. So I'm very proud for that because that is also the science, and we know that. But, you know, if we remain virtual, the thinking would be that the need for a snow day would no longer exist. But I just really am thinking that we will set that to the side, but we do recognize that it is one of the questions that we're all asking.
I understand how it could go either way.
Perhaps the equivalent is an electrical outage because the virtual, maybe the equivalent of a snow day is an outage. We're innovating and growing, so help me figure out what that would be.
It's another yes and no answer, which I think everybody can appreciate why that is. Mm-hmm. If families don't respond to the email that comes to them asking them to select, or families don't know about it, or they're new to the district, or whatever, what's the default? Where will a family land if they do nothing?
The default is the A2 Classroom Connect. That classroom that is a group of students situated at the local school, and beginning virtually, moving to a hybrid approach, and then moving when allowed to a full operations approach.
Okay. So just the way that a family who moved to the area and did nothing would be assigned to their neighborhood school and a teacher, and they would get their class list, it will happen the same way. They'll be assigned to their neighborhood school, they will be assigned to a teacher, and then they will resume the in-person schooling at the earliest, safest time.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, great. And so if families are interested in committing to that entire semester of purely virtual, regardless of what the infection numbers look like, then the other option is the right choice for those families, but it may not be in the actual classroom. It, as you described it, it's more like a rec and ed assignment where if you have enough kids for a full soccer team, then it is just your school. But if this school has a little bitty soccer team and this school has a little bitty soccer team, then they become a super team together. And so we're suspecting that the virtual option will be assigned in a similar way.
We are. And our thinking there is when if families want their child or the child wants to be a member of a classroom where everyone is completely virtual. So they're never going to be looking into a classroom where other students are in the classroom, then that A2, I'm still working on the name, A2 Student Link would be the choice for them.
And I imagine that a lot of families will want both, right? That they want the best of both worlds. They want their known friends and their known teachers and their known community connections, but also to be able to remain online for as long as they feel it's appropriate for their family. And so the choices then would be to use the Connect version, and you definitely have your school community, but the virtual options for you may be somewhat disrupted when other kids go back to school and you're linked in a less connected way, or get enough of your buddies.
Yeah, they will be linked right into the classroom, but they'll be looking at a classroom. In the hybrid model, they'll be looking and participating in a classroom where half the class is present in the classroom.
Okay, and so then the way to get both fully virtual attention and have all your friends is to recruit enough of your buddies from class to all sign up for the full virtual option so that you fill your team in a virtual classroom with your own friends. Is that kind of the way to get both friends and virtual?
That's a thought. My hope and belief is that these virtual communities are going to become rich and fun and be characterized with friendship. We're already seeing it in summer school, is that kids from different schools are already fast buddies in only 2 weeks. So, you know.
It's pretty incredible to watch. They've got a Roblox gaming thing. They've got book clubs, and I don't know that many of these kids knew each other coming in. It is really cool to watch how quickly this digital generation makes digital friends. So I have no worries about it from a cognitive perspective, but I know that kids put a lot of value on having some known friendly faces when they go into a new semester. So I just wanted to set out what those options were to have both your friends and online instruction in one tidy package.
Well, I do want to touch in that if they want to be fully virtual, but scheduled into the school classroom, you know, the A2 Classroom Connect, they can remain fully virtual. It's just the parent would need to consider how that child will respond once we get to the hybrid part, you know?
Right. Which my kid would struggle. So everybody knows their own kid best. So I'm glad that parents have the opportunity to think about those things and make what's the choice that's right for them. My last two questions are related, but not entirely academic. One is the SAT. There's two classes of kids at this point for whom SAT is front of mind. The rising seniors did not take it in school in the spring. It sounds like some folks have been able to schedule in-person testing options by paying for it in the community, but we know that that's not realistic for all kids. And we've had such a great commitment to access to SAT. Has there been any conversation yet about what that looks like for fall to be able to give those rising seniors that opportunity?
We don't know the outcome of that yet, so stay tuned. I did intend to note, and it'll be in Ms. Linden's plan, but we do not intend to have standardized assessments to the extent that we have that option this year. I do know that Governor Whitmer and State Superintendent Rice have appealed to the Department of Education for another waiver. So that's for our standardized assessments. I don't believe we know the outcome on SAT yet, correct, Ms. Linden?
Okay. Is there, I hesitate to ask any more of this team, but is there any bandwidth for representatives of the team to communicate with higher ed about the difficulties of kind of putting together their traditional portfolio for the graduating kids, because that application deadline comes fast in the fall. And I know that a lot of kids are highly anxious about what that might mean if they don't have an SAT by then, or what it might mean if they haven't had an opportunity to polish up their GPA just the right way, or develop their extracurricular, curriculum vitae to the extent they would have liked to. How is K-12 helping to advocate or at least inform higher ed of the challenges we've been having?
I really appreciate that question, and I intended to mention it on our Wednesday exploration learning activities. College prep, FAFSA completion, SAT, portfolio, we're really looking at leveraging that day for students to have some focused time to actually work together in small groups. And, we have our counseling team. John Boshoven in particular is very adept. And many other counselors are also. I apologize, I shouldn't have just said one name, because many of them are very talented in this area. So we're excited about that Wednesday to leverage some special time for students to get to work on, I said personal passions, but it could also be personal purpose to get that college work done,
Great. Okay, that's really nice to hear that's one more way we can support kids, because it's a high stress time in a young one's life. My last question, I promise it's my last one. Fall sports. I know the Michigan High School Athletic Association has put out some guidance, and that may be outdated now. I know the governor has talked a little bit about what fall sports look like. But I'm curious if there's been any thought about when the district itself might be able to have some guidance on what our fall sports look like.
We are literally monitoring the situation every day, every hour. It is unfolding. Every evening late when I get to the news, there's another development on it. Mr. DeAngelis and Ms. Parks are on this, and I will ask if they want to come in and make just a general statement on that. They are not just the MHSAA, but they're also looking alongside our team members at middle school, intramural, all of those questions. So we'll see if one of them wants to come in just a little bit. Oh, it looks like Mr. Cluley's gonna pop them in. This is hotter than whether we're going to school or not.
I'm sure. I mean, because it's both recreational. It's what keeps some kids attached to their school after maybe their enthusiasm for academia has waned. But it's also really important for kids who are relying on that from a scholarship perspective.
Absolutely.
And so I'm sure there's a lot of questions.
Absolutely. I don't mean to make light of it. It's a very big deal. Ms. Parks is here. There she is.
Hey.
Good evening, trustees. Thank you for that very good question, Trustee Kelly. One of the things that we're doing is monitoring what the MHSAA is putting out each week, and we understand that they're having another announcement come this Friday. And so we're just being ready to pivot with whatever guidelines they push down for our teams and our staff and our students to be able to follow. We know that we want to try to maintain as much normalcy as possible in what our athletic activities and our extracurricular activities look like, but we also understand that we're going to have to be fluid and know that it's going to look a little different in a virtual environment.
Absolutely. That's the list of my, Mr. DeAngelis, I'm sorry, did I cut you off?
I was just going to chime in. Good evening, trustees. And we got a little bit more information today through some of our side channels. So with the announcement that's going to come out on this Friday is going to be a set of guidelines if sports are to happen in the fall. So the MHSAA is working incredibly hard, not only in their offices there in Lansing, but with states in our area of the country, as well as the National Federation. The Representative Council the group that really makes decisions for the MHSAA as a governing board, will be meeting next Wednesday. We're hearing different things about decisions that they're going to make. We recognize, or they recognize, I should say, that maybe making a decision right now about what happens in the fall may be too soon. So we're going to be even more interested in the announcement that comes out following the Representative Council's meeting, which will take place a week from today. So we will, I think we'll have a very definitive answer following that meeting about the start of and the potential implications on the fall season by the end of next week.
I do want to point
Excellent.
out that, thank you, Ms. Parks, Mr. DeAngelis. Trustee Kelly, I do want to add that just as we did in the spring, you know, there's possibility of pressing things off to spring rather than fall. We've heard a lot of that across the country. But then also, secondly, there's a possibility of keeping the team intact, even if they're doing virtual workouts but just there is that mentality of staying in shape for the sport, you know, being together as a team. So I heard Ms. Parks emphasize that, and you're exactly right. We'll do everything to keep our teams together, even if they're unable to participate in the normal ways.
Sure, and you know, athletes are a dedicated bunch. They're not waiting for a final pronouncement to start
Right.
training.
Right.
I know a lot of kids are trained year-round for their particular sport. Are we considering any guidelines or even stricter rules about best practices for safety with that, just in terms of our own liability for what it might mean if they're using our facilities? Or, you know, I don't know if coaches are involved yet. I know there's dates during the summer when the coaches are allowed to get involved. But are we being fairly directive in terms of health best practices, but also liability best practices in what we pretty much know they're out doing already?
Yes, yes, and yes. And
Excellent.
our community is helping because I receive photos on my phone and emails in my email box when on occasion members of a team run too closely to others or get excited and maybe fudge the 6 feet or whatever. I do get direct reports on that. So, and I think Ms. Parks, Mr. DeAngelis receive those regularly also. Mr. DeAngelis.
Yes, we do. Trustee, we've had the summer session in place since June 19th under the Michigan High School Athletic Association strict guidelines about summer workouts. We have been, we've had students at all three of our comprehensive high schools in training, all outdoors. Nothing can happen indoor, all with social distancing. Each morning starts with a health screener. They go through a health screener. We have our training crew from Michigan Medicine that is on site with our student athletes monitoring things. All of our coaches were taken through an extensive training. Ms. Bacalor has been involved in some things. We have had to do some contact tracing and some tracking down some positive tests and monitoring those people who might have been close contacts. So far, we haven't had any significant issues with that, but we're it seems like on a daily basis, we're reminding our coaches to remind our students that from the moment they get to our campus, and that means, you know, hanging out around their cars and not following social distancing practices while they're waiting to come and do their check-ins. We're reminding our student athletes, and they seem to be responding very well. Occasionally, we have to deal with some issues around kids being too close, but so far, the guidelines that we've put in place, the expectations that we've put in place are working, and we see a lot of students out at our three comprehensives every day engaged in that physical activity and that team camaraderie that we know is so important to the high school experience.
Great, thank you so much. I don't want to, you know, put more emphasis on the sports programs than on the academic options. It's just that's what's happening right now, where the academic, putting that rubber to the road is still a few weeks out. And so I just wanted to make sure that we were talking about what was in real time now. I just appreciate the efforts of this team so much. It's not a position any of us ever wanted to be in. It's not a position that any of us, would have designed, certainly. But there's an adage: you don't necessarily create your own problems, and you have a responsibility to solve them. We're in a position right now where we're in the position to solve as much of this as we can for our families and our students. And I know there's no one perfect, one-size-fits-all answer, but I really appreciate the thought that has gone into developing this plan. And, tonight was just the tip of the iceberg. I'm sure there's as many questions as there are families engaged with our district. So thank you all for staying on this and being so responsive as we put that rubber on the road and the questions start to roll in. So I will defer to my colleagues here. I'm sure everyone has their own list. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Lightfoot.
Thank you so much, and thank you to the team as well. Dr. Swift, thank you for mentioning the guns, us leading on that effort. I'm glad we're leading on this effort as well. My colleagues know that I have been in their ears since this whole thing started, with wanting to be prepared for just this exact thing. And so I'm glad that the team is put together this document for us to go over. The whole, not only state is looking to Ann Arbor, but the nation looks to us to give others courage to do the right thing, and to give others the information and the science, the data, the stats, the facts that we use and that we have access to because of the town and the richness of our constituency that we have access to. So I appreciate what you've brought before us. Of course, no one wanted to be here. I'm not going to even address that. That goes without saying for me. But what's more important for me is that we are prepared for this mission and that we are the best at it. I am so excited that our teachers have rallied around. The emails I received from them today was an avalanche. I am so happy that they shared a laundry list of very relevant, pertinent questions. I'm interested in working with them to help us answer those questions because they're great. They can help us answer them and we can assign the budget, the dollars to those answers. That's our job. And so I look forward to working with them. I want them to know as well, for every letter that we got asking for one thing, we had some asking for the other as well. So I want to convey that we have, as trustees, our job is to look at all sides and be as comprehensive as we possibly can. Many of us have professions that allow us and afford us even more access to information around policy, around health, around our environment. And so again, I'm glad we're here, that we're spending the time making the pivot so that we can be effective. I want Ann Arbor to lead in this online space. I want our teachers to help us. We won't have it right. Trustee Kelly has posed some great questions. I know we don't have those answers yet, and I look forward to us spending the time gaining those and vetting those as the public continues to share their concerns, and rightfully so, their ideas, their thoughts. We have a rich opportunity here to revisit a whole lot of things. I'm interested in us leading at the state level. They do not know what we need to be doing in full. They need help too. And so I look forward to us helping them make adjustments in policy, whether it's seat time waivers, whatever it is, looking at all of those things that no longer are relevant in this time frame with the constraints on budgets and reports and all of those things. I'd like us to lead pushing against the testing. I don't think we will be ready. It's not fair to put that on our children or our teachers. I think we should push on testing. I look forward to pushing on teacher evaluations. We need to be evaluating all kinds of different things now. It's a new day. And so I look forward to us helping them design what that needs to look like based on what we've found as best practices and what works well here in Ann Arbor. And I'd also like us to make sure we're taking advantage of all those who have just stepped up and said, hey, we are willing to help. I'd love to see you, Dr. Swift, create a whole lot of what do you call them, blue ribbon committees. You can have a blue ribbon, a green ribbon, a yellow, all of them, because we need all the help that we can get, again, to make this the best that it can be, and keep those parts that work. The parts that don't, we can take it back and go, keep it traditional. I'm with that. But there's some things that we might find that work beautifully. I'm concerned about, as I shared with you, the PPEs, not only acquiring them, but disposing of them and removing them. The money alone that costs, I want the public, when we get those dollars, to be as shocked as I was. That's the kind of stuff that the public needs to know when we talk about how do we come back and what do we need to do, because there are some costs associated, even if all things line up. And now that we've had to outsource our transportation and our cafeteria workers, we now rely on other businesses and entities to be prepared to fall in line as well. So some things can line up where food service may not line up or transportation may not line up. So it is not a flick on the switch, as you say, and it just happens. We have to be very vigilant around it. And even as we prepare for the fall, we're going to be busy preparing for to come back to school, ideally, and what that looks like. So there's really no rest for the weary as we do that. But that whole PPE is going to be important. And I look forward to opportunities where we partner any way we can with the city, with the county, heck, with the region, to purchase PPEs and dispose of those things and make sure we have them get the best cost benefit that we can get from that. And then I just can't stress enough on that state legislative piece, the language that they're going to need help, the standard assessments, they're going to need help. We're going to have to rewrite a lot of rules to accommodate where we are now. And I just want us to help lead on that. Thank you all so much. I look forward to us moving on this. I'm glad to hear this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Lazarus.
Thank you. I appreciate what you said, Trustee Lightfoot. I think I'm with you. I think this is a new day, and I think we should. It reminds me of a quote that I really like, which is from Rahm Emanuel, the former Chicago mayor. It's, "You never let a crisis go to waste." And I think this is a big crisis. And I think we have a huge opportunity that we can turn lemons into lemonade, and expand the great educational opportunities that Ann Arbor has. And we can reach out to all kinds of students and families and bring them in and share our resources and be a good community partner to everyone. So I look at some of the things that Dr. Swift, you've presented here, and I see an opportunity, and I've talked to some parents, and one of the things that is on parents' minds is the opportunity online, if we do share out our resources to other school districts that may not have as much resources as we do, we could bring in some unique opportunities to diversify our student population and do it online. And maybe, is that something that we've looked at in doing that, and how would we go about doing it? Is it too late to have those kinds of conversations?
Thank you, Trustee Lazarus. This is exactly the conversation we've had in the past, and you're right. Now we have a new opportunity to reevaluate. So we absolutely can look at that. There are a variety of ways to go about it. And I do meet with the area superintendents twice a week, and we've had some of those conversations. We can also have them trustee to trustee. The way we'd rather not do it through a school of choice mechanism, of course,
Right.
but to do it in a partnership mechanism. So I'm very open to that. I know that Trustee Nelson has done work in the past on this, as have other trustees. I don't mean to leave anybody out of that. So if it's leveraging our programming, I would need to think about, and I know Mr. Combs is out there, but we need to think about what are the ways that it could happen. And I know, Ms. Linden, that you're also in with the area instructional suits, but how might that sharing of resources, a mobilization of resources, how might that look is the question. And
Right.
yeah, I'm not doing a very good
So
job.
I just wanted to throw that out
Yeah.
as a way to really reinvent public education in
Yeah.
this moment of crisis that we have.
Mhm.
The other thing that, my other question that's a little off from that is one of the concerns that I have about our students is to how are we going to make sure that that our students stay on level? If we're not doing standardized testing and if we're pushing back on that because of the situation that we're in, how are we going to guarantee parents that students are making the necessary progress that they really have? Because some kids do well online because it's self-paced. Some kids really are disengaged, and we just don't want to lose that population.
Thank you. That was one of our motivations for opening the door to summer school wide and getting these 5,000 students signed up and many of them participating. I know that Ms. Linden, and I think she's coming back in here, that idea of formative feedback on where a student is, and I know that's in the plan, so maybe we'll hold that question if I don't get her back here momentarily. But we absolutely are looking at real-time feedback from a student's progress, and she will detail the methods that our teachers are using to do that. So in this plan.
Okay. Another question is kind of piggybacking off of Trustee Kelly's question about parents who have students that they kind of have made these little cohorts that they've promised to be safe and practice social distancing and all that. Would they be able to, if they live in a similar neighborhood, in the same neighborhood, and they've gone to the same school, would they be able to pick a full virtual situation and but still have the socialization that they've been enjoying during this time and continue that on? But how, I don't want parents, I don't want to say, oh, everybody can pick their teacher and their group of classmates and stuff. But, these things have kind of organically been created.
Yes.
And how would we support that effort going forward?
I think I really appreciate you bringing this up. I think that we absolutely can support if parents are aware of their students, that there is the word podding, that they're combining with. We, just like we do in Rec and Ed, just like we do in classroom placement, we can receive that. Over the coming days, if this enrollment picks up for the full virtual all year, we will designate a leader of that program and counseling and other support so that we can attend to those preferences. So I know my team is making a note now, those kinds of preference forms that you fill out as a parent of, who you might want to be with and who you might, prefer to have separated. We can absolutely look at that kind of arrangement. At the same time, the A2 Classroom Connect, say the classroom's 25 and 5 of them choose to be fully virtual, that leaves 10 and 10 on each side of the hybrid. And you and I had mentioned the other day that it may be possible that those parents choose, when we're in a hybrid environment, to become pod partners with their 10. We are reading, I noticed Ms. Bachelor sent me something today, the importance, and I know our parents will always be mindful of ensuring that all students, regardless of socio and every other characteristic, that all students are included in those sorts of groupings, but of course. Yeah.
Good, good. I have one other question. The onboarding for the first week, that's 4 days. And what exactly, I mean, if we're launching a new software platform, young students and even high school students, and to parents, will there be in-person training on that, or will it just be online through videos? How are we going to make sure that everybody's up and running on the 8th?
I think it's going to be all.
And is that enough time?
I hear you, and we worry about that, which is why we established September 8th as short learning days, abbreviated learning days, so that really there are 2 weeks there during which time we can troubleshoot. And I do see the team, they love using video instruction. They also, I know, will use live instruction. Based on the infection rates, we have not been doing face-to-face just because being indoors together is about the riskiest activity. Being indoors together with people who are not a part of your home team, your family unit, is a risky activity. So we've not been doing face-to-face, but that does not mean that we don't have materials drop off or one-on-one Zoom meetings. You know, if there's, I heard about a family at one school where it was the teacher and the special educator and the social worker, and they were all on with the one student and family. And she told me the story of the shout that went up in the home when they got connectivity. You know, that they were seeing their class instead of just hearing it, and it just was a beautiful story. So I see that being a full court press, and we will do whatever it takes. And I know, knowing our principals and knowing our ITD team, my guess is that they'll be busy on that work ahead of that week and also following up September 8th and on if we're not quite there.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Trustee Baskett.
Thank you. Dr. Swift, thank you and your team for this, putting this all together for us and being able to walk us through this. Let me say it, since we have not had the opportunity as a board together to be able to collectively give you our thoughts, and I know you've made the time to meet with us individually. I know I personally have taken a lot of your time to share my thoughts on, you know, what I would support and to ask your questions. So I want to publicly say thank you for your patience with me. Sometimes it's tough as an educator talking to a non-educator, and you know, sometimes I need a little remedial training. I have a few questions, some at the very micro level, some at the macro level, and I also have comments. So trustees, please bear with me, especially those who are coming after me. Trustee Nelson, please forgive me. So let me start with, when will this information be available online?
We will have these, Mr. Cluey and Mr. Nadeau are actually here with us this evening. This video session will be posted just as soon as possible tomorrow. It will not be produced at that time. It'll just be our rough video. Then we will be putting up the slideshow decks, also the which are on board docs. Even now, so folks can access them there. We have a new area of the website created. We'll tour you through that on another evening, but that is becoming populated with everything that parents will need. Our intention is to send out an email this Friday to parents, Thursday, tomorrow, or Friday, giving them a heads up that our preliminary plan is coming together and that we'd like their input and feedback, and most importantly, we want to make sure all their questions are answered so that they can make the right choice for their child.
Thank you. And as the new board secretary who's already behind in her communication to the community, my apologies to everyone. Ms. Osinski, when it's possible, if you would please send me a link to this information so that I can include it in communications back to all the people who have provided feedback via email or conversations and things like that. Okay, so when will this be available? Got that. Dr. Swift, will you speak please to assure me and other people in the community that although we're moving to a new delivery of education, we still will have the same professional expectations as we always have in terms of our quality teaching, customer service, such as response time to requests, and support services when needed?
Absolutely. And what we've seen over the summer session where we've been proofing a lot of this work is I see that the response times and supports are even more immediate than they sometimes are in a face-to-face environment. So I believe everyone on the team understands the urgency of supporting our students and families through this time, and I'm extremely impressed and with their work in those areas. And yet, just like always, if folks don't have an answer that they need, just reach out to us and we'll do everything we can to get that answer.
Thank you. And so in terms of reaching out, our school buildings are closed. Our ballast is closed, but families can still find us or communicate directly with us, not only through email, but they would call Ballast or their school building. Where would they call? Thank
you for that question. Every department and every team is open and working. And so on that area of the website, whether it's a particular team at Ballast, there is a phone number and there is an email, so that all of those things are being responded to on a daily basis. I will remind folks that our school teams don't report for a few more days yet. So I know that most of our principals, certainly our high school principals, are on duty, but this is still right smack in the middle of a break for some of our 10-month employees. So just like always, we will share that date when schools are open. And by that, I mean when school teams are back at work and available.
Thank you. Thank you. Because, I mean, one of my concerns is the new families or families who have been in other school districts who actually live in our school district, may have chosen elsewhere, but now they want to come back to us for various reasons. How would they connect?
Right.
So again, the reach out through the website, call Ballast if they have to, because again, not only do they have choices to make, we may have families who need the resources that they may not have yet, such as the technology, the account numbers, whatever they need. So very important.
And a reminder that student enrollment has been in session every day of this summer. So they overlap their duties, and I think only July 4th holiday that Friday, but student enrollment is open and folks can reach out to them any day. And I get immediate or same day responses from them.
And I will urge the community to connect with us as soon as possible, because things may have changed. If you were with our district and left and coming back, such as a Schoology, I don't know if I said that right yet. With new families, this is just a new world for all of us. So please be patient with us. Again, talking about our professional expectations, parents can still expect communications from their teachers, such as parent-teacher conferences and communiques.
Yes, all of that activity that we normally think of in the rhythm of day-to-day school will occur. Of course, it'll occur a little differently, and our school principals and our teachers, as they unfold their school plan over this fall, they'll be sharing all of that rich information. We've just the capacity of human beings to innovate and grow is just impressive. But we've seen school orientation sessions, summer school sessions, parent engagement sessions. We've interviewed and hired employees. The functions of the district and of school are continuing.
Thank you. And so that leads to my next question. I don't want to say return to normal because, that's done. This is the new normal. We just have to figure out how to transition from the past to now. In the past, we're used to back to school welcomes, if you will.
Yeah.
There's still that opportunity to do that. And as you mentioned, the creativity will be based upon, our own limitations, if you will. So families can look forward to still having those, correct?
Yes, absolutely.
Wonderful. Oh,
I
perfect.
can't wait to see how creatively school teams figure out to do it. So.
Yeah. I want to talk a little bit about the opportunity for us as school board members. You have put in a lot of work, your team's put in a lot of work, Dr. Swift, and I've kind of felt bad that we as board members have not done enough. I know you've already mentioned talking with people at the states, but that's something that we as individual board members and as a body can do to advocate for some of the stuff that you've already mentioned, but feeling more pressure, if you will. Again, the opportunity to make those phone calls, to have those Zoom meetings, as well as connect with other boards of educations around the country. I mean, you have been very gracious in sending us links to articles about what other districts are doing. And I look forward to seeing the story on what we are doing. As Trustee Lightfoot has often pushed us, be the trailblazers instead of waiting for somebody to blaze the trail and tell us how to do it. We can't wait anymore. That's not happening. I have full confidence that you have turned every stone over to find out what guidelines the leadership there, and we're on our own. So again, I welcome this plan. So my colleagues, please let us make time for the opportunity to see what we can do to, again, help our students get back in their buildings in person. First of all, let me pause and say thank you to those community groups who've already been doing all that they can and will probably do more for our families. I want to do a big shout out to a great organization, My Brother's Keeper. Our own parent, Daryl Johnson's been leading that. Not only have they been putting food packages, cleaning supply packages, but they have yard signs, which are kind of cute, and reminding everybody in the community what they have to do to stay safe. We need to work and press our community that in order to return to in-person education, the community has to make this happen. And not by pressuring us as individual boards, but pressuring the right people, and which could be each other, such as doing the right thing to decrease the number of cases of this deadly virus, which will then decrease the need for the other things that you have put on our list, such as not only available testing and quick results, but also affordable testing. I'm hearing some families who can't get to the free clinic are being hit with some of these bills, which are ridiculous. We do need additional money for a lot of these remediation efforts or just to sustain us. As Trustee Lightfoot's already mentioned, the community's got to be mindful of what this bill is going to look like. And if we got to spend money here, right now, we don't know of any continued resources to get us through this. So I want to also say anybody can help with this. When I think about, for example, the face coverings and the masks, we are going to require our children to have protective covering. And and we're planning to provide that, as I understand, which is reasonable. But I know children like novel things, and I don't think we're going to be able to buy the cutesy stuff, if you will, the mask, but the community can help us with that. I know there are a lot of sewing bees, which include some of our staff, some of our teachers, and making masks for our children, for example, because these have to be cleaned every day. Yeah. And sometimes, it's just helpful if, again, we can help a family in just these little basic things. this is so much. This is just so much information, and it's a lot to digest. But I want to pause and ask my fellow board members. Again, we haven't really heard from everybody who may be in support or not. But so forgive me, President Johnson. I'm going to ask this question, and you can decide when it can be addressed. But how are the other board members feeling? Are there any objections to this proposal? And if so, please state them here and now, not on social media, but now with each other so that we can better understand. Because again, I think this is a well thought out plan, but of course nothing is perfect. If there's something that can be improved, that can help the team, help us in moving forward, please state it now. I really want to hear from others. I know we've had some individual conversations, but we haven't had them all around the table. And again, I would like to hear now so that the team can improve so that we can move forward with the vote instead of waiting. We really need a unanimous vote on this. I think we need to be fully supportive of this moving forward. Otherwise, it sends the wrong signal to the community. And for God's sake, can we be unified on nothing more than our children, at least, and putting them in a protective environment for education. Right now, I think this option of virtual is the safest, smartest, most equitable way of delivering our education. We hope to get back in person as soon as possible, but again, this is beyond our scope of work in terms of education. So let me pause here but once again, thank you for your work, Dr. Swift, and to your team. I look forward to hearing more. I will be sending, as I've stated, responses to all of those wonderful people who have reached out to us. And I look forward to hearing more. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, since the purpose of this session is to get questions asked and answered, we'll let trustees ask their questions, and then we can have some more open discussion after folks get a chance to ask all their questions. I think that would be just fine. Trustee Nelson.
Dr. Swift, when you place the order for PPE equipment and contemplate facing it, was there any state and national network you could plug into, or did we do that as an individual district?
Thank you, Trustee. Excellent question.
Mm-hmm.
We did that order independently. And I know that Ms. Bacalor or Ms. Minnick can comment on if we're part of a consortia. I don't believe we are yet, but that is what Senator Peters had discussed with superintendents is helping from a legislative side to kind of mobilize so that we could get that through a group effort, not through individual efforts. I know Ms. Bacalor is here. Ms. Bacalor, do you want to address that?
Yes, hello. So there was an extensive process in the purchasing department to look at quantities, quality, and pricing. Jill can speak to that better than I can, or actually Liz Margolis could, but I know that there was a lot of research that went into it. And as you know, the guidance is continuing to change. So our next order might look a little different based on how things go.
Ms. Minnick shares that we're not yet a part of a consortia, but we did use cooperative contract pricing that had been negotiated to the lowest price at a state level, so state or federal level. So that's her response.
I want to use this as a takeoff for a moment to just express the anger I feel that 5 months into this crisis, we are in a position of not being able to bring students back for face-to-face instruction that we know is the appropriate way to teach kids. this began to unfold in February of this year.
That's right.
And in my view, one of the biggest costs is what we're doing to the future of children. And sure, we're doing the best we can. Luckily, people are resilient and hopefully most will be recovered. But I believe a good public education is really important to kids. And it's especially important to those who come from lower income families. And it's a small example, but 5 months into this, there wasn't some national program that we could plug into to get us prepared for the appropriate PPE. And I think it's sad and dismaying. And I just want to say that so that maybe it's just to get it out of my system. So, because I do feel this anger about what our nation has not done. And it's not because it can't be done.
That's right.
Many nations have done it.
Yes.
Their kids are going back to school and they're learning, they're having a good time. And I regret very much the first day of school is going to be a very different experience in the United States. I have a second question that I'm going to introduce by saying, I really appreciate the good work that our team has done. And it's a lot of work, it's high quality. But I suspect that there are still people who are thinking, I really think with all the benefits of face-to-face instruction, why can't we do that? It's so important. So my question is, to the degree we can, I would like you to describe what you think would happen if in late August we started face-to-face instruction in our schools, bringing everyone back, not necessarily all at the same time, but create the caveat, half of them 2 days, the other half 2 days. Just what would happen and where would we be some somewhat arbitrary time, 3 to 8 weeks after opening day?
Thank you, Trustee Nelson. That's an excellent question. Ms. Bacalor is going to go through the timeline that will show that the window for improving community spread, there's just, our opportunity is very narrow to see the level of improvement we would need to see in order to feel more confident. Even if we had improvement, though, the concern is to follow the CDE guidelines of 6 feet. It pulls the classroom. Mr. Laudzana he can share with you when we do the building report, the diagram of the square footage in classrooms, and it brings the size of the classroom down to about 6 to 8 students. And so if our data were very strong, we could responsibly perhaps put on our PPE and proceed on a hybrid arrangement. But considering the combination of the uptick in cases and the fact that most of our, particularly elementary schools, it would be impossible to observe the CDC guidelines and get more than just a very small group of students. So using a virtual model gives us the ability to educate the best number of students in the healthiest and safest way while that community spread is high. If the cases were diminished, then we could move forward, generally keeping most of the guidelines, but understanding that small children won't necessarily keep the 6 feet.
This is actually part of my presentation. So
okay.
whenever we're ready to move to that, I'm happy to go into detail.
Got it.
And some of it is really reinforcing what you've just said, Glenn.
Yeah. You know,
I'm happy to wait. That's fine.
Jeff, I know you had a question and didn't get a chance to ask a question.
I have very brief comments. You know, I'm in a better position than Trustee Kelly, who went first. And I want to say first, I appreciate and applaud most all of the questions, comments, discussion tonight. Just stating very quickly the obvious. This is a really complex issue. There's no solution that will meet everybody's needs. I don't think anybody feels that virtual is going to work for every student, far from it. On the other hand, given safety priorities, to answer Trustee Baskett's question, yes, I endorse starting virtually. Though I don't think ever demanding a unanimous decision is necessary, but hopefully that's the consensus of the board. I want to bring back one issue about sports. It wasn't high on my priority list, but because it was discussed today. I am concerned about using the MHS, Michigan High School Athletic Association, for total guidance on this. We don't use state, recommendations because we're Ann Arbor, as Trustee Lightfoot says. Because the MHSAA works with all the state, and the situation and sentiment in other parts of the state are not the same as Ann Arbor's, and because the main purpose of the MHSAA is to encourage athletics, I would be very careful and cautious about not checking their recommendations for our own appropriate safety standards. And that's my main point. Yeah.
Thank you, Trustee Gaynor. I appreciate you raising that. I should have clarified this more. The MHSAA guidelines are the starting point, and then Mr. DeAngelis works closely with Ms. Bacalor, and we absolutely do set our own rules of engagement. And Ms. Bacalor, Mr. DeAngelis, would you say MHSAA is an absolute minimum? I mean, in other words, we would implement above and beyond that for safety.
Yeah, I guess I want to just reiterate that we employ trainers from Michigan Medicine, and they bring with them their own set of criteria from the U of M system. So what I can tell you is that what the MHSAA has required is very consistent with what we've seen from Michigan Medicine. But yes, it is a baseline, and if there's anything that we feel we need to add on top of those guidelines, those recommendations, those restrictions, we would certainly do that with the guidance from Ms. Bacalor and the health department and any other organizations that are providing what best practices should be at this time.
Thank you, Mr. DeAngelis. And Dr. Swift, that's reassuring. One other point, if I can remember what I just thought of. Again, another obvious one. We have and this has been mentioned, we have hundreds of questions about not only safety procedures and precautions, but the reality of them being put into place. And this is not the time to deal with them. I know we'll have time to deal with them in the future, but of course we're going to be dealing with them from now on. So I just want to recognize those concerns reflected in many emails and other statements from the community.
I appreciate that, and I want to share that. I really appreciate that the leaders of our employee groups, and on Friday I had the great opportunity to meet with a fairly large group of teachers, and they are willing and will be sitting around the table with us to help us to make sure. And then Ms. Bacalor has the health department, will be using all of their guidance and Ms. Bacalor's. And I just want to emphasize that is another responsible component of migrating small groups of students first, so that we can ensure that our protocols are strong and durable.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Swift. I know Ms. Bacalor has another portion. Trustees, I see a couple hands up. Are these urgent, or can we go through Ms. Bacalor's presentation quickly?
Not urgent, but more relevant to academics than health. So
Okay.
I'll defer to you.
Yep. Go ahead. Trustee Kelly.
Thanks. Yeah, I may have some thoughts at the end of the entire presentation as we process, but this academic one I wanted to make sure was clustered with this group here. For secondary students, 6 through 12, who typically have multiple classes, they may take different classes with different students and teachers throughout the day. Will that, when they select into full virtual, are they selecting into a full virtual for all of the classes and then will be scheduled with different cohorts the way they would be in schooling? Or will we do 6 through 12 who choose full virtual the way we are doing pre-K 5, where they have a cohort and go through all of their subjects together?
This is one of the reasons, and you're hearing it across the country, that return to face-to-face learning is much more complicated at secondary. And so maintaining the small cohort of 10 to 12 to 15 students that remain together all the time is much more challenging. We might be able to get to a small number of cohorts, and Ms. Bacalor she'll go through in her part, the advantage of that. But it is one of the reasons why you see many, many districts kind of saying up front that secondary will be virtual for longer because of that worry about widening the group of the number of exposures.
Right. So if students in either, they select into either group, though, the expectation is they may have, these 20 or 30 kids that they do literature with, and then they'll change hours. They'll go to second hour or second block, and then they'll have a different teacher and a different group of kids that they're doing pre-calculus with.
Right.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Great, thanks. So I know we have Ms. Bacalor, and then we have Ms. Linden as well. Can we run through both of those and then have questions after we have those two sections? So, Dr. Swift?
We can do so. Ms. Linden is well prepared, and yet I have covered a lot of the general academic components, so we'll watch our time. I have a feeling that the health presentation is very compelling. So President Johnson, you carry on with the plan and we'll follow you, but the trustees may be bursting with health, with particle droplet questions before too much longer. So